Right, hello, welcome along to another episode of The Dressing Room with the Offload. Great to have you with us. Donncha, you got a new microphone.
I got the new mic, Tommy. I thought if we're going to talk out in the dressing room, you better have the best of kit. So yeah, I basically copied your one. You sent me on the link to it. You were linked to the UK version. This took about 12 weeks to arrive to Cork.
Well worth it. Listen, we have a great treat for everybody who's listening at the moment. We won't take long before getting into former World Player of the Year, 120 odd caps for South Africa, and an absolute legend, Bryan Habana. We caught up with him there recently as well for this conversation. And again, I just want to say before we start as well, the dressing room is all about bringing you in, the listeners. We want to take you in, give you behind the scenes. We're going to bring you brilliant interviews, but we also at some stage want to try and get some questions, answer some questions, make this a little bit more two-way or three-way with Donncha here as well. So please do get in touch, message us on social media. What do you want to do? What do you want to hear from? And we'll do our best to bring you the best that we can.
Yeah, absolutely, Tommy. Like all the good dressing rooms we've been in, we want to create that environment where everyone has a voice, everyone's heard. So if you have something you want us to chat a little bit more about, if there's something you're odd about, there's no, egos are at the door, Tommy. So do chirp in. It's your dressing room and we want to hear from you.
Unless you're someone like Trimble or Dart or something. Shut up, Trimby.
Tugged up with the 20s.
Here, quickly, before we get into Bryan, Lions Fever has kicked off. Not the best result, but my goodness, if only you saw that many red jerseys or green jerseys for the Aviva Stadium. My God, the support was unbelievable.
It was incredible. The atmosphere was through the roof. And you know what, Tommy? The stock of 2005 Lions went up, didn't it? We drew with Argentina.
You drew with Argentina. Well done.
Chest out. But you're right. I think the whole place around, because it was pretty much a travelling support, wasn't it? There was loads of English sitting around me, and
so many.
So good. Yeah, and it was just. Do you know what? They were loving belting out the fields of Antroy, and I must say this. The fella next to us spilled his drink. It kind of hit off Jake's jacket. And when he went out for his next pint, he brought him in a Fanta and a thing of chocolate, just to kind of say sorry. And and there was, I think it was with Wooden Spoon before the match. They want to create more awareness about kind of men talking up about different issues.
The loose heads.
Loose heads, apologies. Yes. So there was a hug it out with the randomer beside you. And I actually think, these kind of icebreakers that people do in these kind of group environments and stuff.
It's like you go to mass and you shake hands beside everyone. But you know what it was? And they called it Hugby. Isn't that so good?
It was great. I actually think that should go as a norm around rugby. Just a really good way to kind of get into it. Now, I could see Jake was a bit awkward hugging this fella beside him that was steaming.
Anyway, good start to the Lions. They've landed over in Perth. They're ready to get going this Saturday. I can't wait for it all to start off. And good. The Lions Fever started.
We'll get into it more on Friday. One thing though that I did notice about the match, we'll go on to the game in greater detail on Friday. Well, we probably won't be. We'll end up chatting about Love Island or something like that. The cheer Owen Farrell got, man.
I know.
The ovation he got when he popped up on the screen was quite incredible, wasn't it?
Yeah. I was raging. I was sitting beside Alan Jones and they zoomed in on him and they didn't zoom in on me. They cut me out.
They cut you out for Alan Jones.
I would have totally drowned out Owen Farrell's cheer.
Well, you know what it would have kicked off? What about our eyes?
Oh, jeez. I don't need to go into that anymore. 10 siblings more like...
Yeah, Tommy, one thing for me though, I suppose the taste in my mouth from the Lions tour to South Africa was cleared off on Friday with just the type of rugby. If we see more of this, rugby is in a really good position. To be fair to Argentina, man, their attack was incredible. It was great rugby to watch when you consider 4 years ago watching that shite box kicking and chasing.
Listen, the game of rugby is definitely a spectacle people like to enjoy at the minute.
Yeah, Friday did, honestly, got me back loving it. I'm there. Whatever about it, there was drop balls, there was errors. It's always going to happen early in the tour, but there was a want to attack. And I love when the Lions play like that.
So exciting, so excited. It just builds it up for the next couple of weeks again. But the pressure is definitely on Andy Farrell and his men to really deliver this weekend. So we'll discuss that on Friday's match. But of course, this is the dressing room. Do get in touch with us. We want to hear from you so much more. And listen, we've got a World Cup winner. We were talking to him just recently, and what a great ambassador for the game. So let's take it away. Here we go. Here's Bryan Habana.
Well, look at this for the dressing room. Finally, a decent winger on the offload. Bryan Habana, you are so welcome.
You're doing a lot of travelling around the Northern Hemisphere at the minute. You're a busy guy.
Busy man.
How do you cope with it? I mean, this is life after rugby. This is what we got to do, isn't it?
Yeah, it is what we got to do. I am very fortunate, Tommy, that I've been presented with a lot of opportunities. Don't get paid quite as many euros as Donncha, unfortunately. So working the scene, I do think there's a very small window of opportunity that we can maximize on. Obviously, you have to upskill yourself. We know we get great skill sets as professional athletes that can assist you in the transition period. But grabbing on those opportunities and making yourself presentable has really been beneficial. Working for global brands was really cool, and it's always I'm trying to chase Matt Guitar and never having to turn right on the airplane. So it's pretty comfortable on an overnight flight when you can lay horizontally. Makes traveling a little bit easier.
I don't know.
Not glamorous though.
I don't know why Gato even cares. I mean, his feet can never touch the floor on the plane anyway. Like, I mean, for certain people like Donncha, I can understand. But I mean, Gato is literally, he's sitting up there swinging his legs. It doesn't really matter for him. But listen, keep going, keep
Tommy,
doing what you're
doing. Looking how much weight you've lost since retiring. You're pretty similar, right?
Yes, give it to him.
I'll have you know, I've got my protein shake here. I'm just back from the gym, and yeah, I am getting a bit skinny. All right.
What is the weight loss protein powder in that?
Hey, listen, shake? I've still got the glutes, man. I'll still take you in a sprint, whatever that cheetah. I think we're still
myself and Donncha don't believe you. Stand up and show the crowd, please. Show us those
Brilliant.
But I'm like Popeye when this stuff gets into me. Honestly, you'll see me ballooning in a minute.
Bryan, it's funny you mentioned that though. People probably, the other side of rugby and the grind, getting the balance right with that family-wise can be difficult. Like, you go from this lovely environment where you have these brothers that you would do anything, and then all of a sudden you're very much on your own. How have you found that transition away from the game, kind of balancing family life and keeping busy?
So Donncha, you're one of the guys, if I could physically see you in person now, I put my right hand against your left ear, because if you want to be successful in any form of life, balance is the last thing you have. So Tommy spoke about, how do you manage it? I think I've got an incredibly amazing wife that takes on a lot when I'm not there. 2 boys, 11 and 7. I miss my wife's birthday, miss Mother's Day, missing Father's Day, and missing my birthday. Not that I'd be getting any presents for my birthday or Father's Day. So to have an extremely understanding partner, definitely helps. I think the sacrifice that we make, and even as players, you'd go on tours for 2, 3, 4 weeks. Your loved ones, that support is incredibly important for you to be able to do your job to the best of your abilities. And in the transition period where, and I think I've been out of it for 8 years now, so it's not really the transition. I'm now really in the next chapter. I think you use that skill set to capitalize on opportunities, working with global brands, making yourself presentable, being able to articulate yourself. I think the rise post-COVID of virtual interaction, I think, has accelerated the way that you can get in touch with people around the world, and the facilitation thereof has been great. I think the big thing for me is I've actually co-founded a fintech company called Pay Me Now back in South Africa. That's had some phenomenal growth over the course of the last six years. And I think when you do then have a team of 19 direct reports that, sort of expect you to be present, to be available, and to communicate, to then facilitate that in a very busy schedule, again, need very understanding fellow executives, but being able to delegate that and almost pull people up. So the transition has led to an incredible next chapter, and I'm extremely grateful and blessed for all the opportunities that have been presented with me. But in saying that, the skill set that I got as a professional athlete has allowed me to be applicable in applying those skills into the next phase of my life.
Absolutely. And a lot of my friends from outside of rugby would speak to me and speak to my wife and just not understand how do you deal with the patients. And it is something in rugby. a partner, a wife who is so understanding because you're away for a World Cup, Six Nations, so many matches, and then you have to try and recreate a new identity in life after rugby, and that just doesn't happen. Even if you were a former World Player of the Year, World Cup winner, this takes work. Another thing that you're doing, and that's incredible about the fintech company, that's really, really interesting because God only knows what we would have learned about fintech as rugby players, but you're also very heavily involved in giving back. You work with Laureus Sport, and they're an amazing charity, which give you great opportunities to meet incredible other sports people, which I'm sure is cool, and travel around the world. But there's a big commitment as well to be involved with. What do Laureus do? And for you to be involved with them, what are you getting back out of that as well?
Yeah. Just Tommy and Donna, I think for both of you, I think the platform that rugby gave us to go out there and live a dream, get paid exceptionally well to do it, travel the world, make friends, have experiences that, as little boys we could only imagine of. And I think being able to come from a country like South Africa, where sport has played such an incredible role in nation building and inspiring, giving back hope. I was a 13-year-old boy back in 1995, getting to be at Ellis Park on the 24th of June, witnessing history being made, named after Brian Robson and Gary Bailey. Unfortunately, a Manchester United fan, which I don't publicly want to display because I live on the 99 treble for all my life, given the United team like today.
Yeah, you could have been called. You could have been called Maguire or Rashford. That would be worse.
Yeah, I wouldn't be mind calling that if I got their salary, to be honest with you. But I think being in that stadium in 95, getting to witness history, getting to understand the impact, that Nelson Mandela, who wore a number 6 Springbok jersey, which for 80% of our country was a sign of oppression. But that iconic statesman understood the power of sport. And, I was a 13-year-old boy, having never played the game before. And to experience a watershed moment like that for me, where my life got completely changed. The following year, I went to go play rugby at King Edward's, the 7th school in Johannesburg. First ever game for the under 14 G side. I was that sharp. I was almost as bad as Tommy at kicking for poles. Couldn't pass with my left hand. And I didn't walk around with my pants around my ankle like Donncha at any point in my schooling career. But just that pivotal moment, and again, when I got asked to be a Laureus ambassador back in 2008, and just seeing the phenomenal work they were doing, giving people the opportunity to be upskilled, those that were disadvantaged, to then become an academy member in 2020, and now sitting as chairman of the board in the South African Sports for Good Foundation. 27 programs that we have a Funder Plus model for, 34,000 children getting impacted. Laureus over the last 25 years, I think there's been €250 million raised, and more than 7 million kids impacted in some way or form. And when Nelson Mandela opened the academy as its first patron in 2000, that iconic sort of speech saying sport has the power to change the world. And I think for us, when you are so privileged, when you do have the ability to change mindsets, give back, and I think that the inkling of absolute inspirational hope when you see a little kid who's got nothing, who's worrying about where their next meal is coming from, and that interaction of seeing them feel valued, gaining an installation of hope within them is something really special. And what Laureus are doing globally is pretty cool. Yes, you have the sports awards, the Academy Awards, the glitz and the glam, the Rafa Nadals, the Novak Djokovic's, the Kelly Slaters of the world, the Simone Biles, Lindsay. It's the
Bryan
plethora
Habanas.
of sporting royalty. Well, I'm not the same pay grade, but in that caliber, Tommy, thank you very much. But I think to be seeing all these phenomenal athletes who get acknowledged for their contribution to sports, but that they understand how their platform can impact for good, which is absolutely amazing. So the work that Laureus is doing is for me something of self-worth, because we don't always have the time or capacity to run a foundation and do things, and to be able to be given that platform, which allows me to seamlessly fit into giving back, is pretty exceptional.
It's amazing.
It is. It's incredible. Brian, you chat about it there. And look, we know from being on tour and being around South Africa and having teammates from South Africa, there is no greater country or club for tying to where they're from and bringing that drive on. And someone that's probably accelerated that is Razzie. And, you know, obviously there was your brilliant World Cup win, but you just sense now with him and everything he's doing with that Springbok side, the amazing South African team, that they're fully hooked into where they're from and what they're about.
Yeah, Donica, that's a great point. In 95, I was inspired. You only had Chester Williams, that was in that team that spoke to 80% of South Africa. In 2007, it was myself and JP Peterson. And I think our crowning glory as a country, without a doubt, came in 2019 when Siya Kolisi, lifted that trophy. Makazole Mapimpi became the first Springbok rugby player to score a try in a Rugby World Cup final, which doesn't say much about me, Tommy, so we might be on the same level there.
You scored enough, you're all right.
Don't worry, we were gone home by the quarterfinals anyway, Brian.
We could only dream of getting there.
But I think to see a team that was truly representative of South Africa being able to talk to South African young kids, Siya Kolisi, when we were watching winning the World Cup in 2007, he was watching it in a shebeen, which was like this bar in a shanty town, because his grandmother, who was staying with, didn't have pay-per-view television. His dad was an alcoholic, and his only opportunity was to be in this very dangerous environment of grown-up men, being able to see what the Springboks were doing. Makazole Mapimpi walked 10 kilometers to school every morning, 10 kilometers back home every day, for 5 days a week, for 5 years of his life. And he was probably the person that was the least ever expected to become the first person to score a try in a Rugby World Cup final. And then to have that crowning glory of this team, the Chetan Colbys of the world, speaking to a generation of South Africans who knew that it is possible, a reality like this can be achieved. And again, South Africa, we are spoiled for choice in terms of what rugby in particular have given back to our country in terms of nation building, in terms of breaking down socioeconomic barriers. Is it going to take away all the problems associated with South Africa, the crime, the corruption? No. But I think for those brief moments of time, kids get inspired. Kids get a self-belief that they can get out of circumstances. And I think rugby, in its form, I tell people it's the greatest sport in the world, because no matter whether you're young or old, male, female, thin like Tommy or overly large like Donica, there's a place for you in rugby. And I think there's no other game in the world that's as inclusive in its scope as rugby. And for me, knowing that inclusivity, the game of sevens with its multicultural diversity, how the game stretches beyond borders, what we saw in Japan in 2019. And I think we're fortunate that the values, the respect, and yes, rugby is in a difficult spot financially. The game's potentially confused. There's a lot of struggles within the world rugby environments. But I think the core ethos of the game, particularly at grassroots level, and what it represents is just so special. And I hope that we can continue as form of sort of stewards of the game, portraying that message, because if things become a lot more detrimental and there's a constant decline in numbers in the game, we're going to lose something that is just so valuable. So yeah, it's been great to be a South African and understand the impact that sports can make. But hopefully we can, as real stewards of the game on the other side of it, speak so positively about it that the interaction becomes even greater.
Absolutely. And you've been one of the big standing shining lights of and being a part of that as well. Congratulations to you on career and life after rugby as well. On this, it's interesting you're saying there, because the values of rugby are so important, and the game that we watch week in, week out is so good. But as you say, it's losing eyeballs, it's losing participation, it's maybe from a club perspective particularly is going the wrong direction. There is this talk with this R360 league where they're going to create new teams and make it a global stage, try to create it almost like an NFL of rugby. You would have been one of those players being drafted in on the mega bucks. Maybe you could go in as coach. But do you think something really radical, because you went to Toulon, which were kind of seen as the Galacticos of rugby and had incredible success. But but everybody was loving that. I loved watching that team and seeing the likes of yourself and Ghetto and just megastars gelling together, playing some wonderful rugby. Do you think something radical could put a new perspective and create a new excitement around the game of rugby?
So I think I've got one big sort of negative around the game of rugby. It's the only sport globally that isn't a global sport in terms of its itinerary. So it's the only sport globally where in the Southern Hemisphere and the Northern Hemisphere, the season doesn't start at the same time. And I think until you really get parity in that environment, so a big thing would be, you know, I think that there's a lot of rugby power and financial backing in the Southern Hemisphere, but if you look at the Northern Hemisphere environment of the Frances of the world, the Ireland and the Englands, that the rugby financial impetus is really coming out of this environment. And do we then say, listen, everyone starts in August, everyone ends in June? Because I think therein, when you have parity and transparency, and there's ways and means of trying to do things differently, trying to innovate, trying to make the game more exciting. I think there's also, this RC360, as exciting as it is. I know there's been multiple attempts at changing things over the last 15 years. I'll never forget, Rusty was actually a part of a contingent back in 2010 when I went down to Cape Town, and they were going to do like this 4-week, IPL type rugby. And it was going to be outside of the game window. And then we are getting a decent amount of money for a short block. And I'm like, I'm in. And then it just all fizzled out. We had the 12s competition that came through a couple of years ago as well. A lot of excitement, the likes of Eddie Jones, Steve Hansen. There were some big names thrown into that pot. So, I mean, until we really understand what this R360 is all about and how it fits into the global calendar, I think World Rugby will have a big say, because all of a sudden, if you're not playing in your country for a federation or for a union and then expect to play international rugby, how does that work? And I just think there's always been this divisive strategy of, how do we become more aligned? And I think the first thing's got to be, let's align a calendar, because then you can make really good decisions. You're not going to have this constant debate of Northern Hemisphere teams tired in the summer in June or July, the Southern Hemisphere teams having the same argument in November, December, outside of a test window, inside of a test window. So rugby is in a, I'm not say it's on a knife edge at the minute, but it's in a very volatile
It's going
space.
that way.
We really hope that the powers that be make good decisions based on what the outcome is, and not, where, the game currently is.
Because looking at the product on the pitch, to be fair, they're gladiators now, Brian. Not taken away from the teams you played in, and Tommy's right. You tug out every time, But do you look at it now and think, I'd love to be tugging out now? Or, you've won everything from Curry Cups to World Cups. Are you glad with your time, or do you look now with a bit of envy that, maybe it's a different game, but could be, a good time to be in it?
No, so I'm extremely grateful for the time period that I got to play the game in. I think we all got that zero social media, and we sort of got the back end of the start of the social media era. And I think the team engagements around, when you were traveling overseas, you were going for coffees, you were playing card games. And I think the influx of social media plethora that's come to the fore, when the amount of sponsorship commitments and I'm really grateful for the time period that we got to have, almost being isolated. When you travel the world, you wouldn't have this backlash of keyboard warriors on social media telling you how shite you are. Yes, you read in the newspaper on the Sunday what your scorecard was, and there was a few one out of 10s that I did get across.
Tommy got a 0.
Can't beat a 0. Can't beat a 0.
Genuinely got a 0.
In the Six Nations.
Did you really,
0.
Did you really
Nothing.
get a 0?
Against France.
I
One to forget.
I think I've got the clip somewhere. I'll find it.
Okay.
But
we don't miss that.
That was our only real interaction with the public. It was reading the media and sometimes the internet. So I think I'm very grateful about the time period of our generation, because we had this togetherness. Super Rugby was at its pinnacle, at its peak. When I sort of got involved in 2005, then go on and win it. And things seemed a lot simpler, in my personal opinion. Back then, we had 98% of our Springbok contingent playing in South Africa. You had the likes of Percy Montgomery, or Jaco van der Westhuizen, and Victor Matfield. There were inklings of players playing overseas. Jean de Villiers came post the 2007 World Cup Donica to Munster. So it was sort of these, but it wasn't this the spread of the spread of people around the world. So the game's become a lot more global. Do I envy it? I think the players are under so much more pressure to perform, so much more pressure to be professional, so much more pressure to have this, ability to mentally be able to be a professional athlete with the plethora of keyboard warriors. social media in your face day in and day out. So there's a lot of respect for this current generation in terms of what they have to handle. I mean, the game, I only started really going to the gym, Tommy, when I was 18 years old, because the game wasn't as professional as it is now. And these kids, 14 years old, doing video analysis at school in South Africa.
Yeah.
I mean, I can remember as a 20-year-old, I had like 2 VHS recorders having to stop, rewind, record, rewind, like just to get like it's just at the click of a
I
button, you
used to
get your
love those
videos,
days
right?
because the coach would put it up on the projector and he'd press pause, but there was no pause. It would be shaking. So he'd be like, "Who's that?" Who's that? No one would be putting their hand up. You couldn't work it out. Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. The game, like it's just gone to a complete different level. And we always question, myself and Donncha, do they even look like they're enjoying? Can you even enjoy yourselves nowadays with social media and the pressure that they're under as well? Listen, one thing that is going on at the minute, and you are a massive part of it, and it was huge at the time in '09, the Lions. Like for myself and Donncha, we got to travel twice each with the Lions. But for you, in '09, that opportunity with the Lions coming to town, like how special is it for the host country?
So I do want to say, you people up north don't understand how lucky you are to have it every 4 years.
Yeah.
For the Southern Hemisphere teams, it's once in a generation. I mean, Nathan Sharp started his career after the '01 series and ended his career having played 100 Test matches for Australia in 2012. So as a Test centurion,
wow.
he had never got the opportunity to play against the Lions.
Wow.
And so I think from a Southern Hemisphere perspective, again, for us, post what had happened in 1997, being world champions, losing to the Lions, and that incredible aura of what the Lions represented, I was 16 years old, and I was like, geez, this is really special. And to then be a part of, I think, what was an absolutely phenomenal series. I don't think I've seen as competitive, abrasive, collision-based games that Loftus Test match. I think it was just, and again, I think there'd probably be a lot less people on the field in today's game, given how the rules have changed
You're not
on
wrong. You
both
watch some of
leagues.
those clips back
It
nowadays,
was
it's wild. But
incredible.
you're right, like we lost that day. And I still have that jersey framed at home because that was a test match that will live forever, I think. And just the
Ever.
drama
Mm.
around it, the
Yeah,
ferocity of it, and to
everything.
come out the wrong side is still heartbreaking. Ron O'Gara still won't talk to me. But
He
I mean,
won't. Actually, Brian,
he won't even come on the podcast and
Yeah.
discuss it because he's not right.
Brian, you would have chased his kick. Tommy wasn't arsed.
Tommy, there was one good kickoff I managed to get up on you, but you got on pretty quickly. So the series, I think the Lions, obviously, I think there's a real struggle for people to understand the beauty of it, particularly in the Southern Hemisphere. Does it still have a place in the game? I'm still so much for a Lions series because traveling Lions squad, and I got to see that firsthand in South Africa, and yes, we have a country that has a lot more need, but as a team, you went into the township, you gave jerseys, you did training sessions, and even as, people coming from the Northern Hemisphere, you got to see the impact on a far deeper scale than only what happened, when you were playing the games. And people don't realize, as a Lions outfit, how much give back you actually do. Yes, your time capacity, getting ready for the test matches is critically important, but there's just so much more to the Lions that is just so beautiful. And I think, this current series where you probably expect the Lions to go well, given the Australian track record, but I also think it's going to be a lot more competitive than what people think it's going to be. I think under Joe Smith, there's been a real resurgence of understanding of professionalism in that setup. And hopefully we have a test series that really encapsulates everything that is good about what is a Lions series, because in the Southern Hemisphere, you only get it once every 12 years, and the uniqueness and the privilege and the special environment around it is something so incredible that you really want to make it the best opportunity to play, because it is a once in a career.
It's great to hear you saying that, because you've a finger on the pulse with that kind of Southern Hemisphere. Like, we look at Australia and we know they're so important with the Lions Tour, with the Rugby World coming up. You mentioned Joe Schmidt being there. It is important that they bang, Brian, isn't it? It's important that Australia really make this a competitive test series.
I think Australia, when South Africa left Super Rugby, Australia probably had the biggest detrimental impact to sort of their rugby union environment. For those don't know, union, it's probably like in some states in Australia, the fourth or fifth biggest sport. So they've had their own challenges, both administratively. Phil Wars now they're their CEO and trying to steady and right that ship after what was a very tumultuous time with Eddie Jones coming back pre the World Cup in 2023. So I do think, firstly, for rugby, Donncha, it's incredibly important that the Australian teams, both as franchises or provinces playing against the Lions, step up to the plate. And then more importantly, when those test matches come along, that the real essence of what encapsulates the strength of a Lions series comes to fore. Because as much as Andy Farrell, Mario Itoje and the team will probably want to be putting 20, 30 points on Australia, as a fan base, you didn't get to tour in 2021 given COVID. So you'd think there'd be a lot of people from the Northern Hemisphere going down to Australia. And just that festival environment of coming together, the camaraderie that it represents, the four home nations traveling together down to to the Southern Hemisphere. I just think it's just such a beautiful element of the game, and you need the games to be competitive for it to be more enticing. So really hoping that under Joe Smith that the Australian team can really put everything to the fore, because their teams actually have been doing impressively well in Super Rugby, given the hardships that they have faced both administratively and financially over the last few years.
Big time, big time. Oh, listen, and no better man than Joe Schmidt as well to pull them together. Listen, we're going to finish it off. Just a couple of quick questions.
Hold on, just before
Donncha's got one first.
No, a quick one, Brian, because it's wrong not to ask. I was on to Jerry Flannery, and I couldn't believe South Africa are going to play 15 test matches, starting with the Babas and finishing with Ireland. But because the matches have been so competitive, is there beef? Is there beef between South Africa and Ireland? Now, we see it with the club games, with the Sharks and Munster. We've seen it with the kind of Cranberry song, the way it's been spinned a little bit. You know what I mean? That's our DNA, man. And here we're there, it's been changed into Razzies in your head. And this is one of our finest singers, Dolores, giving it some. But it's interesting when the games get competitive.
Yeah.
There's edge to South Africa, Ireland now, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's amazing. I think that's entertainment. That's sort of what rugby is lacking, right? I think to see what happened in the Munster Sharks game a few weeks back. I'm like, if that didn't happen, what would we be talking about? Like, all of a sudden there's these spicy moments within the game. If Ireland had gone on to win the World Cup in 2023, Russie might not be replaced, and it's in your head. So I think firstly, what has happened in the last 8 years, I think Irish rugby in general, given the success that they've achieved, beating New Zealand, firstly at Soldier Field, then going down to New Zealand and beating New Zealand in New Zealand, what they've been able to achieve in Six Nations, I think there's a massive respect of their capabilities as a team. And they're probably headed into that 2023 Rugby World Cup as a favorite, which respectfully, they deserve to have that title. And then to see teams, go on and do so well. Leinster unfortunately haven't got over the line in the Champions, Cup over the last few years. But I think there's a massive respect that Ireland can mix it up with the best in the world. And it's doing, when you're coming up against one of the best teams in the world, you want to be playing your best rugby. So I think for South Africa, we got a really mouth-watering Autumn Nations series against both France and Ireland. We end off with Wales, but those two test matches in itself are going to be absolutely massive. So is there spice in the game? I think the game of rugby needs that entertainment, needs a bit of grunt. And I do think, is there a bit of animosity? 100%. But what that delivers is a really great viewing spectacle, because players put everything out on the field, physically, mentally, and it's beautiful to watch. I mean, I was in Durban in July last year, and if I put money on it, I thought Ireland coming at the end of their season probably wouldn't. And all of a sudden, Ireland come out and beat the world champions in the backyard. The ends 1-1, and the drama of who's the best team in the world is still there for another 12 months. So, is there a bit of animosity? Is there a bit of argy-bargy? I love it. I think that's what the game needs. They need these sort of superstars, entertainers, because we're trying to attract new fans and create new storylines. Which, like I said, I think November is going to be really mouth-watering, Donncha. Like I might have to bring a few more layers.
I think me and you were doing some gig as we do.
Of course, yeah.
So looking forward to that one.
Is Donncha not MC?
We'll probably rope him in. Listen, we'll finish up just a couple of quick ones. Listen, and it's really simple, but have you, like, you've been a part of such incredible moments, but is there one, what's the standout? Like, looking back on it all, what's the bit that really pinched yourself?
Somewhere, to be brutally honest, I tell people this, and again, I had some great moments, but for me, like the best moment in my career was getting to run out in that Springbok jersey for the very first time. And I started off as a 13-year-old in the under 14 G side at King Edward's in 1996. To then think, November 2004, 8 years later, I was getting to represent my country at 21 years old. And all that sacrifice, all that support and effort from your parents, all the coaches that sort of built you to that point, to then get to realizing a dream was incredibly special. I got to score a try with my first touch of the ball in international rugby against the then world champions at the home of rugby, Twickenham. And I tell people it was the best moment in my career because through all that effort of the journey to get there, it made me realize how incredibly special having that jersey on your back is. And that I wanted to, when I tasted it for the first time, it made me realize I never want to lose it, or I'm going to work even harder to try to keep it for as long as possible. And yeah, the moments of, winning World Cups and successes and losing 49-0 to Australia, losing to Japan, those all build character. But if you never got to experience that first test match, and I mean, the stat in South Africa is that if you play schoolboy level rugby in your final year of school, your chances of becoming a Springbok rugby player in the next decade is 0.00058%.
Oh, what?
So ever since
You're telling me there's a chance.
you're telling me there's a chance. So ever since 1896, there's only
Wow.
ever been 945
Yeah.
Springbok rugby players.
Oh
Wow.
my
So
good,
that's
that
less
is
than-
incredible.
That is less than 10 a year, right? And to know that, I mean, when I made my debut in 2004, I was Springbok number 766. In these past 21 years, there's not been 200 players to represent South Africa for the first time. And you think of the plethora
Wow.
of kids. That's not to say you can't become a professional rugby player, because that, but just the uniqueness of getting to represent your country. And for me, the 20th of November 2004 was by far the greatest moment, because to get to the pinnacle, but then to understand how incredibly phenomenal it is, it just made me want to work even harder to be there for as long as possible.
Brian, we won't keep you now, but just for boys and girls listening, what do you believe is the secret sauce? You know what I mean? You've mentioned the percentages there, but if you were starting off, little girl or boy in our game, what do you have to have? What's the secret sauce? What's the difference?
So I do think that there's two things for me. Firstly, you got to shoot for the moon, because even if you miss, you're going to land amongst the stars. And I think sometimes people, you have these possibly unrealistic dreams, but you don't realize that even if you don't make those unrealistic dreams, just a level below, there's still some pretty cool dreams to be achieved. And the second one, that's for me a non-negotiable, if you want to become successful in any sphere of life, whether it be in sport, in art, in culture, in business, discipline is an incredibly important component. And there comes, the hard work, the resilience, the perseverance, and everything else. But firstly, put yourself into a place where you're dreaming big, because then you give yourself an opportunity to become extremely disciplined to understand what you need to get there. But if you don't have discipline, life in any way or form is going to be a difficult one to achieve success. So, and the last one is, don't let people steal your joy. Because I think in a world where we are constantly bombarded with negativity, with skepticism, there's a 10-15% negativity that like outweighs the 85% of positivity. And you're like, but it's only such a small percentage. So my big thing is, don't let anyone steal your joy, because in this world, it becomes so easy for your joy to be stolen. So dream big, work hard, and never let people steal your joy.
Well, man, it's been a joy to talk to you. Honestly, Brian, love that. Inspirational stuff as well, but such a great vision of the game of rugby at the minute, what's going on. And you're a brilliant ambassador for rugby and for Laureus and everything else. And even the fintech company, check you out. Listen, mate, absolute
Very
pleasure
cool.
to catch up with you. Thanks so much.
Yeah, good on you, Brian.
James, so good. See you in November.
See you along the way. Come on, we'll teach you.
Cheers,
we'll
guys.
we'll teach you how to sing "Zombie."
Or reteach me about Rassi or with Rassi. Do I bring Rassi
Yeah,
with to that
yeah,
karaoke
yeah,
night?
yeah. Exactly.
He's not welcome anymore. He's out. Well, not for the
No,
Munster lads.
he's a Munster man. He's loved.
Good man, Brian. Thanks.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, James. Have a good one.
Well, there you go. Listen, he's a great ambassador, isn't he? We just said that. The amazing work that he's done. He's never at home, but God, he's doing a lot of good out there for rugby.
Do you know what, Tommy? It's good for us to see as well, because he was elite on the pitch, but now off the pitch, he is actually bringing a brilliant drive. And we'd like to think we've worked great as well. And you work your tail off. But it's great when you see the other lads grasping, because I suppose what we've learned from rugby players is you're going to have to work post-retirement now. You're not going to make it to the end with the salaries just simply aren't good enough.
Yeah.
And to see him come out and bring that level of graft and want and even dedication to even the small little things, know that appearance matters, pushing himself, turning up on time, all the traits and characteristics, and pushing himself on in a different world. It's great to see. Good on him.
Good on him. Good, lovely guy. Lovely to catch up with him as well. So I really enjoyed that. Yeah, I'm enjoying these conversations. We've actually got a real treat for you next week ahead of the Reds too. Are we allowed to say who we've got next week?
Never do. It's the dressing room. Everything's open in the dressing room.
Okay, well, Les Kiss, the former Irish coach, Ulster coach, London Irish coach, now Reds head coach, and soon to be the Australia head coach after Joe Schmidt. He's going to be joining us for a chat, and it'll be class to catch up with him.
Can't wait.
Another great episode to really look forward to. But again, on the dressing room, do get in touch with us, because I know you have been sending in some questions and we just haven't really had time to get through it. So this is going to be the place where we're going to have a good old discussion.
Yeah. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll chat to you Friday.
There we go. See you later.